Thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Jim Durkin, House Republican leader. I represent the 82nd District in the western suburbs of Chicago. After 3 months of hearings with dozens of independent groups and Illinois citizens providing hours of testimony, and just 1 week to go in this year's legislative session, the Democrats hit a new low by dumping their proposed maps at 7 p.m. last Friday evening. They did so to give the public, the advocacy groups, and the media, and most certainly the Republicans, zero opportunity to react. The initial maps were submitted were nothing less than a kindergartner's artwork. They are nearly impossible to replicate, as the Democrats have provided no data, no shapefiles for the public to transparently see how they were drawn. Make no mistake, these maps are drawn solely for the Democrats to maintain their political power in the state of Illinois. The Democrat Party, the party of transparency, won't even share the data which they used as the foundation for these maps to the public. They scheduled 4 public hearings this week, 2 of which are in the same day, in an attempt to ramrod these maps through the General Assembly before May 31st. What we've seen here today is the lowest of lows for the House Democrats, which quite frankly, I did not think was possible after Mike Madigan disappeared. But as Speaker Welch said in January, it is a new day. And that new day is worse than what we witnessed under Madigan. These maps are the perfect example of why the Independent Commission is the only answer to the crises. Countless Democrats, current members of the Illinois House, pledged publicly that they support an independent commission to draw these maps, including Speaker Welch. 31 House Democrats voted for an independent map constitutional question just a few years ago. They did their victory laps, they sent out their press release, and talked about how transparent they were and that they were public officials for the people. But where are they right now? Where are they right now? They're sitting silently while the transfer of power from Madigan to Welch continues to drive corruption further into our state government. Thank you. Now, before I send this over to Tim Butler, I want to direct this to Governor Pritzker. It's now up to you to keep your promise. Veto this map on behalf of the 13 million Illinoisans you represent. Now I'd like to turn this over to our spokesman, ranking member on the House Redistricting Committee, Representative Tim Butler.
Thank you, Leader Durkin, and appreciate the opportunity to be here again today through a Zoom news conference. My name is Tim Butler. I'm a state representative in the 87th District. I live in Springfield. I'm the spokesperson on the House Redistricting Committee. You know, every committee hearing that we've had in the House, whoever has chaired the proceedings has said the exact same thing every time. House Democrats are dedicated to transparency and public participation in the redistricting process. What has happened over the last several days is the opposite of transparency. To have maps in a PDF format, straight out of 1990s clip art, released on Friday night at 7:30, and then to be followed up late Sunday with a Google map, really does nothing for transparency. These maps were put out without any data. I have asked, all our members on the committee have asked, Leader Durkin has asked, where's the data? Where's the data, Democrats? They released these maps without any data whatsoever, knowing that American Community Survey data is not the data that is needed to draw the new boundaries for legislative maps. We need the decennial census data that won't be out until August to be able to draw these maps. Frankly, these maps make a joke of the redistricting process, and they're a slap in the face of the public who have been demanding fairness and openness to this process. It's really something that so many groups have asked for openness. So many groups have asked for transparency, yet these maps were put out there without a news conference, without any documentation, straight out of the secret room that we've talked about in the Stratton building, and put out there for the public to see over the weekend. And now we're going to have a hearing starting tomorrow on it, when nobody really knows how these districts were made, what the data has gone into them. We don't even know if the districts contain the right population to be able to be drawn correctly. I think it speaks volumes that the majority continues to refuse to answer questions about the data. It's a mockery of the process. It's why we have called time and time again for openness and fairness and a redistricting commission that many of us have championed in a bipartisan way over the last decade. And remind you, we went to bat for a redistricting process when we had a Republican governor as well. So today, I call on the governor to veto these maps, which were drawn unfairly in a manner that we don't even know what the data is, and it's obvious that they're for partisan political gain. The governor has pledged to veto a partisanly drawn map, and what we have here today and what we will have at the end of the week, I'm sure, is a partisanly drawn map. Now I turn it over to my fellow House Redistricting Committee member and member of our leadership team, Representative Avery Bourne.
Good morning. I'm State Representative Avery Bourne. I represent the 95th Legislative District, which includes all or portions of Christian, Montgomery, Macoupin, and Madison counties, and I live in Morrisonville. I'm here today to reinforce what we've heard really over the last months, but particularly over the weekend from community groups and Illinois residents who are extremely concerned that their voices were not heard in the development or in this resulting new legislative map proposal. Late Friday, as has been mentioned, we saw a new map proposal released by Democrats that we still don't know what data they used or what process they used to reach this result. A flawed process produces a flawed product, which is exactly what we have in these new maps. These new maps were allegedly used or created using the American Community Survey data. We're not sure what else. And over 20 advocacy groups over the weekend have put out a statement talking about how this is an undercount of Illinoisans, and as Representative Butler said, a slap in the face to any kind of fair representation. If we aren't counting all of Illinois' residents, the map is inherently flawed, and we are not adequately representing them in the legislature. This error in their process will have lasting effects on Illinois residents if it's allowed to pass, which is why I'm again calling on Governor Pritzker. This is a flawed process. You must uphold your pledge to veto this map. With zero trust in the ACS data or in the Democrats' backroom process, there can't be any real faith in the resulting map. Every Illinoisan has a right to fair representation, and their voices cannot be ignored. We've seen that their voices throughout this redistricting process have been ignored, which will result in 10 more years of their voices being ignored in the legislature. People deserve to be counted, and these maps do not show that. We have other options. The ACS data and a fast-tracked map by the end of May 31st is not the only path forward. So instead of Democrats doubling down on bad data and a bad process, we should consider, as we have all pushed for, a new and more independent way forward to do this process the right way. I will now turn it over to my colleague and fellow redistricting committee member, Representative Dave Severin.
Thank you, Avery. I appreciate that. I'm Dave Severin from the 117th District, State Representative. I live in Benton, and I represent the Franklin, Williamson, and Hamilton counties. After what I saw on Friday night, I truly believe the map released by the Democrats is a head fake, an old basketball move, to throw even more chaos and confusion into the process. We've seen this show before. 10 years ago, the Democrats released a legislative map that caused chaos and confusion and backstabbing and backroom deals. That's what they're trying to do here as well. As a candidate for governor, J.B. Pritzker pledged to veto an unfair map drawn by politicians. He's now signaling that he'll break that promise and sign off on a map drawn for the politicians by the politicians. I was a member of the House Republican Redistricting Committee. It was clear to me during the more than 24 hearings I participated in that the Democrats weren't interested in the public input at all. The Democrats point to those hearings as some kind of great kind of kindness and transparency. but we would sit through the same kind of PowerPoint presentation every meeting, get a chance to ask a few questions, and then the Democrats would go back to making their own map behind closed doors, and we know about that. We're really are missing two key components. We need to even begin drawing fair maps. First, the politicians need to be taken out of the process. An independent commission has been supported by both sides of the aisle. The governor previously said he supported using an independent commission. We don't have one. We need one. Second, we don't have the census data that we need to draw the accurate maps yet. What data is even being considered, or what to make the maps we saw? We have no answers to these questions, and we're a week away from having those answers, even if we get them. The Democrats' remap chair, Representative Hernandez, has said many times that they're using American Community Survey, better known as ACS data, input from legislators and other sources without identifying what those sources are. The map itself looks like a watercolor painting. You may see the back of Representative Bourne's son's drawing here in a little bit. It's really kind of an insult of the people of Illinois that the Democrats would release a map with so little detail and so little explanation as to how they even achieved the lines you can decipher from the pictures I've seen. We need the public's input in this map if we aren't going to go to the independent route. Democratic politicians picking the Illinoisans that will be their voters for the next decade behind closed, locked doors in Springfield, dropping the map at 7:30 on a Friday night is just about as Illinois as it gets. The governor needs to take the lead on this, follow up on his pledge to veto this politician-drawn map, and engage with the legislator in a bipartisan manner to draw their fair maps. And I'll now turn it over to my colleague to bring it home, Representative Ryan Spain.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Representative Ryan Spain. I live in Peoria. You may remember a infamous Illinois political leader, Mike Madigan. That's a blast from the past, but the Madigan playbook still lives on here in the state of Illinois. And even though Mike Madigan was removed from power by his own caucus back in January, they didn't part ways with the Madigan playbook. And we have seen this play out time and time again. This is the Madigan fair map fake out. There's a few steps to how this works, and I'd like to go through them. They're pretty simple, actually. Step one is to block reform. This phase of the Madigan playbook takes place years ago when Madigan, not once, but twice, blocked citizen-led redistricting reform proposals in 2014 and 2016. The powerful speaker called in his top enforcers to ensure that these citizen-backed reforms did not become law, setting the stage for our map-making process now in 2021. Remember, it was Madigan's handpicked justice on the Supreme Court who delivered the majority opinion to block fair maps and independent redistricting reform in 2016. He also has blocked me and other members of the legislature from moving forward with our own efforts to change the state constitution in the Illinois General Assembly. Step two, draw the maps behind locked doors. Once you've blocked all of the citizen and good government reforms, the next step is to dust off that old map making room. Make sure you clear out all the old furniture and install expensive new locks on the doors so you can begin drawing the maps in secret. This phase begins regardless if data is even underway to draw the maps, because ultimately it doesn't matter to Democrats that we actually use real data to draw maps. In fact, as we saw from the maps dropped on Friday, the only thing that seems to matter are the home addresses of incumbent politicians so that Democrats can be protected and Republicans can be punished. They invite all Democratic members to enter the secret room and give them a chance to pick their voters, because that's what this is about, finding a way around the democratic process. They can't tell us what type of data is being used or what they're doing in that room. The map is made, after all, to maximize political advantage. It is a rigged process that we've seen time and time again. Step three is the process that we're about to enter now. Limit opportunities for debate. As you go about the process of building this map, you have to promise that you will value transparency and public input, and that you will allow the public early access to maps so that they can have a full opportunity to review and make comments. But as we've seen before, and as we are seeing now, this is an easy promise to break. As we saw last week, the best chance for success is to drop a map late in the evening on Friday night and hope that the general public is not paying attention. And next, we will see Democrats limit debate and give the public as little notice as possible about the hearings that will take place tomorrow and Wednesday. Step 4 is the final and last step, which will be to pass this map at the 11th hour at the end of May. So once you've allowed less than 1 week of public comment period, you can now pass the maps at the 11th hour. We'll probably see these maps pass late in the middle of the night, with all sorts of other bad policies and previous actions that we've seen the General Assembly use to avoid controversy and public review. This is what we see happen again and again. And we know that Democrats will blame the swift passage on the deadlines that are approaching at the end of June to pass a map by the legislature. But the end of June is not the deadline for when a map must be passed at all. It's when Democrats would lose total unilateral control over the process. And for the Madigan playbook to work, they must maintain unilateral control of every aspect of this process, or the process won't work and the public will be allowed to participate. If you're sick about hearing the Mike Madigan playbook, I am too. I'm really sick of it. And I thought that things would be better when new leadership and a new speaker was elected in the Illinois House of Representatives. But unfortunately, it's not. This is the same playbook being executed again and again to make sure that voters do not have the opportunity to be involved with how their government is designed and how it should work. In 2016, remember, we had nearly 600,000 Illinois voters sign a petition demanding that we would consider redistricting reform throughout the state. This measure was thrown out by Madigan's favorite judge on the Supreme Court, Tom Kilbride, after Commonwealth Edison executive brought the suit to the Supreme Court. This was John Hooker, who is now one of the 4 individuals involved with ongoing activities with the Justice Department and the corruption case regarding public official A, Mike Madigan. So the culture of corruption continues, but I want everyone to know this is many, many, many years in the making, not just a Friday night news dump, but a carefully orchestrated campaign to make sure that all voters in the state of Illinois are denied the opportunity to be involved in building a better government and solving problems.